Good evening, everybody. This is Tuesday, and we have another edition of Team Training Tuesday. I also like to call it Applied Neolife because I like to discuss how we can use the products, the magnificent products that Neolife has given us to make our world healthier and happier. Today, we are talking about children. And I want to actually highlight why it is crucial to establish good health habits early. A lot of us make that mistake of waiting until it is too late. Okay, so those are the life stages. We have early childhood, where it includes infancy and the toddlers, and then they grow to become the preteens, rather the preteens and the teenagers. That's between 12 and 20. And then early adulthood, and then ultimately the golden years. We see a lot of health issues in the golden years, but I just want you to understand that those health issues don't start in the golden years. They have to have started quite a while back. And that's why I thought I should present this particular topic so that we all become more aware of the importance of nourishing our little ones well, our little ones and maybe the teenagers, so that when they're adults and they start having their own children, they won't negatively impact those children that they have because they will have laid a good foundation. It reminds me of a presentation I once did, and I asked the audience whether they had ever seen anybody construct a house starting with the roof. And they all laughed, thought I was being quite funny, but I was very, very serious because we all know that we start with the foundation. We don't even start with the walls, we start with the foundation. So feeding children is a vexing situation always. You don't know what to give them. You don't know where to source your food. You don't know whether what you're buying in the stores is supplying what the child needs. And so let's carry on and listen up, because the reason it is crucial to establish good habits early is because malnutrition in childhood, especially in infancy, leads to permanent effects that negatively interfere with normal growth and development. Also, children have lower nutritional reserves to draw upon, particularly if their intake and absorption is inadequate. And then they are childhood events that occur. We hear of children that get burned, children that fall, maybe break a bone, infections, infestations with worms. All those are worse if there is malnutrition in the whole situation, in the mix. So let us see why it is so important as we carry on. Today, detection of malnutrition is difficult. So why is it difficult? And I tried to think of a better answer than this, but I couldn't. I believe it is because of the modern diet. Those are the culprits, and they lead us into a cycle of low nutrient density, high calorie foods, which result in overweight and obesity. And then as a result, we see this nice chubby child and we can't for a minute imagine that that child is malnourished. Well, the bad news is they are. And then also today, the body's ability to store fat has resulted in a lot of negative health outcomes. In the past, it was important for the body to be able to store fat. And when I say in the past, I'm talking way before microwaves, fridges, and computers. Okay, it was important for the body to be able to store fat because food supply was quite erratic because of the seasons, and the body used that as a mechanism to ensure ongoing nutrition, because they could then convert that fat, the body could convert that fat into energy in the event of a drought or a famine, or even a few days of hectic fasting and activity. But today, you don't have to go very, very far to get food anymore. It might just be round the corner, as in your kitchen, in the fridge. Now, to get our children these days to eat nutritious food can be difficult. We all wish they were eating all those carrots and the broccoli and all those lovely things that are seen in this picture, but it can be difficult. It is actually very difficult. A, they don't like the taste, and B, we don't have the time. We adults are also guilty. We don't pay enough attention to ensuring that we supply the right nutritive foods, fresh, whole, organic, okay? So malnutrition manifesting as childhood obesity and chronic inflammation. And if you remember, I like to emphasize that when you see obesity, it is a sign of chronic inflammation. It is becoming increasingly more common as a result, but not totally limited to the following. Food that has been highly processed. Yes, we are eating a lot of highly processed foods. Inadequate physical activity. It's also associated with an underactive adrenal and thyroid hormonal function. So there is hormonal imbalance. It is also linked to exposure to toxins, which result in a lot of inflammation. So we've discussed this a few times, but let me just go over it again. The role of hormonal imbalance, and I'm talking about it with reference. I'm talking about hormonal imbalance with reference specifically to the effects of highly processed foods. So what happens is that cravings are created by this sensation of hormones that are triggered. And at this point, I just want to say that a lot of the food manufacturing industry has employed people specifically to study this and to use this to their advantage, so that the foods that they supply us cause those cravings, create those cravings, so that we keep eating more and more of them. So you need to understand the hormones: dopamine, cortisol. Dopamine is for pleasure. Cortisol and adrenaline cause stress. And we all know that saying of stress eating, okay? So if there's a lot of triggering of cortisol and adrenaline, it's going to cause the stress and push one to eat. And then insulin, which we all know is very, very important. It responds to food. It is released in response to food. But when there are foods that are very high in sugar or metabolized into simpler forms of sugar, the spike in insulin goes through the roof, literally, and that causes a lot of imbalances. Then there's another hormone called ghrelin. It's the one that stimulates appetite, and it increases the need to keep eating, and it also promotes fat storage. So that interplay is really something that has been used to the advantage of a lot of industry, but not to you as an individual and you as the parent of a child. And so I just thought I would emphasize that point. Now, what do we see as negative health outcomes from overweight and obesity in children? The first point is that it actually crowds out the space where organs would grow. So it causes growth disorders. It may cause stress and strain on the legs and the internal organs and the back. And then the child begins to complain of physical symptoms, which might limit their activity, their physical activity. And here we are saying they are not doing enough activity, but maybe because they have pain and they won't be able to say, I have pain here and therefore I cannot do all that gymnastics or physical exercise. And then it can also lead to insulin resistance. We are seeing more and more pre-diabetes and diabetes in younger and younger people. It's as a result of those hormonal imbalances and too much sugar and all that in our modern diet, there is an increased tendency to get infections. And that is when mothers and caregivers will take the child to a doctor. I didn't introduce myself. I am a medical doctor by training. And yes, that's when we see all these children arriving. And our training was that we treat the infection with an antibiotic. And a lot of infections are being treated with antibiotics to the extent that there is quite a lot of antibiotic resistant strains in our environment today. So all that culminates in higher risk of cardiovascular diseases in adulthood. And for the female child, they can get pregnancy complications and obviously psychological effects. So I hope I have painted a picture that will cause all of us to pause and say it is important, it is crucial to start early, because we don't want that all those things to happen. Now, the significance of that kind of fat storage in the abdomen, we've talked about it before, so I won't spend too much time on this, but the metabolic syndrome that we see in adults actually is set up in childhood if all those things are happening. So yes, let us just carry on and say, in addition to all this, we have to be so aware that the child might be undergoing emotional tension and trauma from whatever cause. They might also have food sensitivities and or allergies. The children these days might be so bored that they turn to eating. It's a form of stress eating. And then there is an entity called food addiction, where people are actually addicted to food, okay? And all those things can be managed with correct nutrition because they are caused by inadequate intake of certain nutrients. So let's carry on. Now, I want to talk specifically about protein and why protein is important. Protein means the first nutrient, and it should always be the first nutrient for us to consider and to start with. You know, plants actually have a lot of protein in them. So we have to have our diets not too much meat, but much more plants. So plant-based proteins, and we can get a lot of protein from them as well. Now, what do proteins do? Proteins increase the metabolic rate by about 30%. That means the body's ability to turn nutrients into energy. And also protein moderates, or proteins moderate, depending on whether you want plural or singular, but let's use the singular. Protein moderates secretion of insulin and also leads to the release of another hormone from the pancreas called glucagon. And what does glucagon do? Glucagon actually mobilizes fat from tissues to be used as energy. I've brought this up so that we start examining the kinds of breakfasts we are giving our children. Remember, I said it should be the first nutrient. It should come first. You should start with a good protein meal, okay? Now, I'm just going to move on to another topic, but I just wanted to point out that a commonly overlooked cause of cravings is the fact that there is an abundance of convenient and highly processed foods, but the common cause of cravings is malnutrition. So, some insight into common childhood conditions. I thought now that the seasons are changing and I want to apply it specifically to common childhood conditions. We all know that children tend to have these conditions and then they are carted off to be medicated. But let's start in the gut, okay? It's a long time ago that Hippocrates said, all disease starts in the gut. I just want to remind you that the gut is lined by one layer of cells. And if this is the inside of the gut, it is actually the outside world. And then inside the bloodstream is inside your body. So it is quite possible to damage the single layer of cells, which are bound together by what we call tight junctions, such that all these crazy nutrients and preservatives and undigested foods and antibiotics, yeah, and all those things kill this healthy gut and turn it into a permeable or a leaky gut because the junctions, the tight junctions are now compromised. That results in reduced nutrient absorption, but it also results in accumulation of all these things, immune cells and undigested foods into the bloodstream, and hence a disease process begins. So we need to start at the beginning. But how does it manifest? It manifests as any way that inflammation will manifest, such as blocked nose, cough, wheezing, itching, skin rashes and hives, bloatedness, headache, fatigue, and if the child is so young, irritability. And what do? We reach for either gripe water or something for pain, and that is not always the answer to the problem. So I want to talk about allergies, asthma, because those are very, very common childhood events. And I want you, when you go home, to reconceptualize, to think again about it, and perhaps get down to the foundation, just as we've been through this evening. So some important facts. Allergies may run in families, that is true. A family may be more susceptible, more prone than others. But babies that are not breastfed seem to be much, much more allergic. Now, isn't that a common state of affairs these days, where moms have to go back to work quickly and they cannot breastfeed, or some moms are not wanting to breastfeed anymore because it's not cool. They're so afraid of losing something about themselves, I don't know what. So other causes of allergies, and in this case, we could talk about asthma, emotional causes such as anger, anxiety, general stress, which trigger those hormones that I talked about earlier. But what it all points to is that the immune system is not functioning well at all. So food intolerance can lead to allergy, particularly if there are particles of undigested food that manage to enter the bloodstream. That can cause a reaction, starts off as a food intolerance, and then it can develop into an allergy. Then some allergic reactions may start as soon as eating and chewing starts, and those can be easy to identify, right? Some people might be so allergic, for example, to nuts, that as soon as they put one single nut in their mouth, everything flares up and it is clear. But harder to detect are the ones that have delayed reactions. So we need to be so aware of that. Some more points to note. We like to medicate our children, don't we? But most drugs used to control asthma also cause jitteriness, They can cause mood swings. They can cause inability to sleep, that we call insomnia. And also, please be so aware, read those labels, and please try and eat real food and feed your children real food, because food additives, I've talked about processed foods a lot. Food additives and preservatives can be the reason that allergies and food intolerances happen. So let us go through a list of a common situations such as asthma, and remind ourselves that conditions that may lead to it include adrenal disorder. Adrenal disorders, the adrenals are the organs where a lot of hormones are made and then put into the bloodstream. So adrenal disorders, things like cortisol and stress hormones, anxiety, fear, crying. Severe emotional stress can lead to an asthma attack. Change of temperature or the weather. Exercise. We want our children to exercise, but some of them, because of the ongoing inflammation as a result of whatever is happening in their little bodies, that can cause an attack. Low blood sugar. And I put that one in there because if we're eating too many of the processed foods and we don't have enough nutrients on board, there's so much fluctuation in the blood sugar. It might not always be high. It could actually dip right down and be low. And then common things like infections, viral or bacterial infections that cause bronchitis. And then I just want to stress this, that stress and the failure to cope with that stress are, in summary, the cause of such attacks. So I just want to recap and say here are some manifestations of delayed reactions that you should be aware of in children. Delayed reactions to irritants that might be food intolerances. They might manifest with just irritability, a child that is always irritable, especially if they're young. They can't communicate yet, okay? An irritating cough, persisting or occasional unexplained fatigue. You have a child play, and then suddenly just crashes. And you think the child is sick, you worry, you take them somewhere, and they become medicated. And then rise in temperature for a short time after exposure to an allergen, or even a rise in a pulse rate. So mothers and caregivers and anybody who's looking after a child, we need to be sharp. We need to be looking out for these things so that we have a high index of suspicion that something is going on, creating a response in the child's body. So now the question is, are there enough nutrients in the diet? Okay, we might try our level best. We are eating real food. We are making it mostly plant-based, which is a good piece of advice. But are we indeed getting enough nutrients? You know, the answer today is, well, not really. So I'm going back a little bit to the basics. We need to strike a balance. These are what we call the macronutrients. Proteins, I've mentioned already. We need carbohydrates, but not highly processed ones, complex carbohydrates. And we need a good supply of fats for a child who is growing to create energy. Then we also need minerals. Minerals. Now, the body cannot make minerals. Minerals have to come in food. But unfortunately, our soils are quite severely depleted of minerals today. So let's carry on and then we'll get back to the solutions. So for example, a child and an adult, all of us, we need chromium because it's very important. It enhances insulin signaling and increases insulin sensitivity. You recall that we talked about insulin resistance just a few minutes ago. So properly functioning insulin will affect carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism. the utilization of those macronutrients. Then other minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, zinc, all of them are very, very important because of their involvement in enzymes and bodily functions. And their absence could actually be one of the reasons that food intolerances and sensitivities happen. So this is to sum it up. Due to modern food growing and processing, we are all deficient in minerals, and we therefore need to supplement. So I also wanted to point out some big drivers of asthma, now that we're talking about children and a common condition that can manifest in children, as well as allergies. Vitamin B complex deficiency, vitamin C deficiency. Both those groups of vitamins are water soluble. The body cannot retain them. They have to be supplied. Then minerals that can be deficient, manganese, I'll point that one out, but magnesium, selenium, and zinc. All those are very, very important, both for building and growth and for the immune system. So people with asthma have been noted to have lower than normal levels of stomach acid. And that's why children tend to be affected, because they normally have lower than adults in their stomach acid, because their cells that produce the acid haven't yet fully developed and matured. So that's why we see a lot of asthma in little ones. But let's talk about amino acids, which amino acids are the building blocks of protein. If, for example, methionine and cysteine, which are very important for repair of lungs and also to reduce inflammation, and that's because they're involved in making antioxidants within the cell. There's a very important cellular antioxidant called glutathione. If these amino acids are absent, if we are not starting with the first nutrient called protein, okay, then that just drives the whole situation of inflammation. So with all that background, can you see that we need to start early with nutrition, with health, looking after our children well, and generally teaching them so that they too can promote wellness? And there's no better opportunity than what we have. But first of all, I have this question. I like to ask this question: who can we trust? Okay, a lot of people are buying things from different places, and the reason for having this presentation is so that we can share with you what we know, and I'm going to unveil it just now. But a research was done, and it was found over a 9-year period between 2007 and 2016 that very many products, they found almost 800 products, 776 products that were marketed as dietary supplements at that time, also contained hidden active ingredients that were thought to be unsafe or unstudied. So let us look at what Neolife has as answers that will impact children's lives and make the world a healthier and happier place. And I believe all of us are wanting that very, very much. So who can we trust? I'd like to introduce the Scientific Advisory Board. It was founded by Dr. Arthur First, and he was a top toxicologist and pharmacologist. This board researches and develops everything that Neolife has, and they have on the board people like Dr. Diane Clayton, who has done a lot of work in children's nutrition. So all of them are experts in their field, and my advice is that yes, we can trust them, because it is the one company that has led the way in giving us whole food nutrition supplements. Then they have a concept called targeted solutions. However, they advise that we have to start with core nutrition as the foundation. There are foundation products. I've put this slide in very specifically because all of you like to ask from time to time, what do I give when somebody is manifesting like this? And all of you who might have asked me that question will have learned by now that I answer your question with another question. And I often ask, what are you on already? What Neolife products have you begun them on? And to my surprise, shock, horror, the answer comes back as, no, they haven't started anything yet. Well, here is the answer to that. Start with core nutrition and then add targeted solutions for specific health needs. But always start with the core nutrition. I hope that clears that one up. All right, so Neolife taught us a long time ago that a wellness pyramid has to have a lot of physical activity if you have the energy to do that, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and proteins and fats in that sort of order. But today's typical lifestyle pyramid looks something like that, where we're doing a little bit of physical activity and eating way too much fats and sugars, and unfortunately, highly processed ones. So that's what we need to correct, because energy dwindles quite rapidly if you're not supplying. If you're not supplying the nutrients. A lot of children slip by the time they're teenagers. They're always complaining about how tired they are. And then by the time they're adults, they have slipped into the sick zone. And there's a lot of life wasted, literally, which is so unfortunate. So we want to correct that and say we can have healthy cells if we supply the whole grain oils. And Neolife was the first company to pioneer that concept, because it is known that if the cell is unhealthy, it becomes very hard and cannot accept any other nutrient into itself. And remember, activity of a cell happens inside the cell, not on top or outside. So the first product that we are privileged to have in our product line, as far as nutrition is concerned, is TreaNN. And it is within the children's nutritionals as well. So Lipotropic has TreaNN, as well as other nutritional supplements in there. This is ideal for young children because it comes in as a syrup. So you can start it as early as you want, literally. And then we have Vita Squares, which is a complete vitamin and mineral support for children. I would say up to the age of about 10 or 12, although if they can swallow other supplements that are designed for adults, there is no harm whatsoever. It's just that these are chewable tablets and they have no preservatives or anything like that. Then VitaGuard is the complete antioxidant complex for children from fruits and vegetables. It's equivalent to our adult carotenoid and flavonoid complex, which, by the way, when you remember the stages of life, if you have people in their golden years, in the really older people, they can use these ones as well if they prefer. And then NutriShake is ideal for children. NutriShake needs to be mixed with milk, but should there be any desire not to, then you are welcome to mix it with juice or water. And then we have a vitamin C. I mentioned that vitamin C is very, very important. It's also important for stopping situations like allergies and asthma, and also boosting the body's immunity. So we have chewable tablets. And then we have omega-3 for children. We got mini. When that happens and it carries on, you are put outside. Eh? Okay, then
oil. Intersection oil.
Okay, excuse me. I am going to remove you if you unmute again, if it happens again. Okay, then yeah, omega-3 is very, very important. for children, and it actually matches with any of the other supplements as well, but it's very, very important. And then vitamin A and D, an excellent product. Please use more of it because vitamin A will protect the lungs, the intestines, and all those places, all the linings within the body. And so where to begin? This is what I would say would be the most logical place to begin. Anybody wants to start a nutrition program. And just so that you know, Neolife does not have any of these things in their product line at all. Artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, that is one of the biggest culprits in the causation of belly fat because it really damages the liver and then spills out into the abdomen. Artificial colors or preservatives, it does not have them. Genetically modified ingredients, not at all. Gluten contributing ingredients, no. And then cholesterol or saturated fats and hydrogenated fats. So when you use the shakes, you are assured of quality that is going to nourish you and not damage the body. And in Pro Vitality, that's what we are looking for in all our children. I will just carry on quickly. And so that is a picture of the children's supplement program. But I wanted to talk about the older children as well and say there's absolutely nothing wrong with them using some, okay, just a minute. I need to put Namuli out because she won't mute. Okay, lipotropic adjunct. It helps to collect the bad fat. So it keeps the lipids emulsified in the bloodstream. It contains those two items, choline and inositol, which then collect all these lipids, the fats, and help to carry them through to the gallbladder and, out through the digestive system and out of the system. So for the child who is, let's say from about 10 and they can swallow a tablet, it's an easy tablet to swallow. It has vitamin Bs and it is not expensive. And for asthmatics particularly, I said that they tend to have low hydrochloric acid. Betaine hydrochloride will help to boost that hydrochloric acid formation. So it's a brilliant product. I tend to do this to pick enough and just to highlight it. Okay, and then the detox program for the older children. And then I need to talk also about the importance of keeping the environment as toxic free as possible. So we have cleaning products. We also have personal care products, but I just have projected the cleaning products. So that is what I had about children's health challenges and the fact that we need to start early to raise them up in the way that they should be raised so that when they are older, young adults start getting their own children, grow into their adult years, they won't suffer because you will have laid a good foundation for them. And the founder of Neolife said this, and I like this quote very much: eliminating fear will free us up to take a few more steps towards our goal. I hope we all have that one common goal of making the world a healthier and happier place. So I'm going to stop the screen share and I'm going to invite comments. And I see that Michael, you're ready to ask a question.
Yes, good evening and thank you for the presentation. I wanted you briefly to tell us the product to give for people, especially the children who have leukemia and also sickle cells, because it's also monotonous in children these days. Thank you.
So right now, I'm just going to stop recording so that we can have a lively discussion.